Welcome to the world today. Here's what's coming up. Protests continue in Belarus over the presidential disputed election. Russia says mounting concern over the safety of its COVID-19 vaccine are groundless. Plus, former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden picked Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate for the position of the vice president in the November polls. Welcome again, and thanks for joining us. I'm Akaite Afia. Those protests are still going on in Belarus over the country's controversial presidential election results. For a third night, protesters have clashed with police and security forces who have fired back with live bullets. The demonstrators have been using metal rods to target officers. Clashes were also reported in Minsk and other cities after the main opposition figure, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, fled to Lithuania, where she was given a one-year visa, though she says she had to leave because of her children. Alexander Lukashenko, the country's incumbent president, was said to have won 80% of Sunday's vote, but there were widespread allegations of vote rigging. Even the EU has weighed in, threatening to impose sanctions on the country. We are seeing different types of protests going on in Belarus. Hundreds of women dressed in white have done a protest of their own, taking to the streets this time protesting police violence. More than 1,000 people have been detained for taking part in protests, according to the police. The fate of some of those people remains unknown to their relatives, who spend hours waiting outside detention centers to find out where their relatives are. President Alexander Lukashenko had said earlier today that the waves of protests in the wake of the election are led by people with a criminal past and the unemployed. Broadcast saying that providing security was a priority for the government. The 65-year-old former Soviet collective farm manager has ruled the country for more than a quarter of a century, but faces anger over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, a sluggish economy, and human rights. He claimed a landslide re-election in the vote on Sunday that his opponents say was rigged. He has sought better ties with the West amid strained relations with traditional ally Russia. Brussels lifted sanctions imposed over Lukashenko's human rights record in 2016, but will consider new measures this week. More members of the EU are considering reimposing sanctions. Also weighing in on the situation in Belarus is U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is visiting the Czech Republic. During a briefing earlier, he said the election in Belarus was not free and fair and urged that the nonviolent protesters be protected and not harmed.
Look, we watched an election that we were very concerned about. It wasn't held in a way that was free and fair. We care about that because we care deeply about the Belarusian people. Just as I talked about in the Czech Republic, we want the people of Belarus to have the freedoms that they're demanding, that they think are in their best interests. We watch the protests. We urge that the nonviolent protesters be protected and not harmed. It's not in anyone's best interest to do that. And we will continue to speak about the risks to the Belarusian people. We want them to have freedom in the same way that we want people all across the world. You mentioned in Iran, you mentioned in Russia, you mentioned in China. We want them each to have the same set of opportunities and freedoms. We'll continue to try our best to deliver those to the people of Belarus as well.
Well, Russia has nothing to say to critics of its recently announced COVID-19 vaccine, saying that the criticisms are groundless. Shortly after the Russian President Vladimir Putin made the announcement on Tuesday that it had been given regulatory approval after less than 2 months of testing on humans, experts quickly raised concerns about the speed of the country's work, and a growing list of countries have expressed skepticism. Scientists in Germany, France, Spain, and the U.S. have all urged caution. Russian scientists said early-stage trials of the vaccine had been completed and the results were a success. The Russian vaccine uses adapted strains of the adenovirus, a virus that usually causes the common cold, to trigger an immune response. CEO of the Russian Director Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev, says international cooperation is vital to the development, production, and distribution of a newly approved COVID-19 vaccine, and it is essential if the world is to overcome the pandemic. Earlier, he elaborated on the efforts that went into the Russian vaccine and stressed the importance of international cooperation in the overall fight against the deadly pandemic.
Last for too long. So our vaccine demonstrated both the antibody response and what's called T-cell response. We believe that for longer immunity, 2 shots are needed because antibodies could start being reduced very quickly with just 1 shot. So we believe it's important to have 2 shots, and we believe that artificial barriers to knowledge or really unfair competition is just negative for the world. And I think we've seen too many examples of attempts to do unfair competition, to tarnish reputation of Russian vaccine, of Chinese vaccine recently. And those are very negative steps. I think they are not moving us forward in the fight against COVID.
While many countries around the world are deeming face masks necessary to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, a sheriff in Marion County in the U.S. state of Florida says he's told his staff they are not allowed to wear one at work. This comes as the global figures from the pandemic exceed 20 million this week, and a resurgence reported in parts that have once experienced high numbers. Here's the global update.
Mask wearing is still a controversial issue for people in the United States, where many do not believe they need to. And as nationwide figures of COVID-19 rise, nearly 180,000 new child cases of COVID-19 have been reported in 4 weeks in the country, an increase of 90%. Meanwhile, European countries are battling growing outbreaks of the coronavirus, with Germany recording its biggest daily increase in infections for more than 3 months. In the last 24 hours, 1,226 cases were recorded, the highest number since early May. The health minister says he's concerned, but insists the situation remains manageable for now. Warnings have hardened in France over rising COVID-19 figure. The Prime Minister, Jean Castex, says the situation is going in the wrong direction and warns the epidemic could become harder to control. New cases have risen from a few hundred per day last month to an average of 1,600 now. The number of new clusters each day has risen 5-fold. Finally, Australia today recorded its deadliest day of the coronavirus pandemic and the biggest daily rise in infections in 3 days, denting hopes that a second wave gripping the state of Victoria may be stabilising. Victoria reported 21 deaths, 2 more than the previous deadliest day earlier this week, and 410 new cases in the past 24 hours, ending a run of 3 consecutive days with new infections below 400.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama is obviously pleased with former VP Joe Biden's pick as running mate for the upcoming presidential election in November. In a statement, Mr. Obama said, "Choosing a vice president is the first important decision a president makes. When you're in the Oval Office, weighing the toughest issues, and the choice you will make will affect the lives and livelihoods of the entire country, you need someone with you who's got the judgment and the character to make the right call." The former president later said he had known Harris for a long time and that she was more than prepared for the job.
There are a number of women who are qualified to be president tomorrow. I would pick a woman to be my vice president.
It was back in July that the former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden vowed he would pick a woman to join his presidential ticket and that he would appoint a committee to help him vet possible running mates.
And some have gone so far in states that
The 77-year-old had said the candidate should be someone who could step into the presidency if needed. He also sought advice from his former boss, the first African-American president, Barack Obama, who had formally endorsed him the week before. By Tuesday night, Mr. Biden made the long-awaited announcement. Normally, an announcement as big as this should have been made via television, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was made via Twitter, with Mr. Biden saying, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate." The 55-year-old Harris responded later on the same social media platform, "Joe Biden can unify the American people because he's spent his life fighting for US, and as president, he'll build an America that lives up to our ideals." With social unrest over racial injustice and police brutality against Black Americans rocking the country for months, Biden had been under increasing pressure to select a woman of color as his running mate. She is also the first Asian American on a major presidential ticket.
I introduce the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Reacting to Harris's nomination, U.S. President Donald Trump said he was surprised by the pick.
Well, she lied. I mean, she said things that were untrue. She is a person that's told many stories that weren't true. She's very big into raising taxes. She wants to slash funds for our military at a level that nobody can even believe.
Residents of Berkeley, California, where Harris grew up, have praised Joe Biden's decision.
I shared the news with my staff. All of my friends and family started calling in, and as you can see, you were standing here, the neighbors came out rooting for her also. We're excited. It's history, and we hope that she and Biden make it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized.
Harris, a former prosecutor and state attorney general in California, is well known for her sometimes aggressive questioning style in the Senate, most notably of Brett Kavanaugh during his 2018 Supreme Court confirmation hearing. As presidential candidate, she took Biden to task in a nationally televised debate over his past stances on mandatory busing for students as a means to desegregate schools. The choice of a running mate has added significance for Biden, who turns 78 in November and would be the oldest person to become president if he is elected.
Still ahead on The World Today. How much is too much to spend on a COVID-19 face mask? Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Our correspondent, Maria Bird, captured a few more responses to Mr. Biden's pick and its significance during a period of protest and movements to end racial justice.
First African-American woman Kamala Harris to be named the Democratic vice president pick in American history. Biden tweets his excitement for his running mate, believing that she has the power to close the gap between him and President Trump. Women from across the state of California share their excitement.
Just as a lifelong public servant, I am so excited about the leadership that she's going to bring. I believe a Biden-Harris ticket is not just a winning ticket on election day. It will be the winning ticket every day in the White House.
This is a Black woman, and I'm a Black woman. And I know there were a lot of people when I was elected as the first Black woman mayor in San Francisco. There were a lot of emotions going on with myself personally, and there were also a lot of emotions of people going on around me. And what I am so excited about is what this means for little girls everywhere.
While Biden and the Democratic Party are excited about the vice presidential pick, Kamala Harris, President Trump gives his opinion.
And we'll see how she works out. She did very, very poorly in the primaries, as you know. She was expected to do well, and she ended up at right around 2% and spent a lot of money. She had a lot of things happening, and so I was a little surprised that he picked her. I've been watching her for a long time, and I was a little surprised. She was extraordinarily nasty to Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh then, now Justice Kavanaugh. She was nasty to a level that was just a horrible thing, the way she treated now Justice Kavanaugh, and I won't forget that soon. So she did very poorly in the primaries, and now she's chosen. So let's see how that all works out. But I was a little surprised at the pick. A lot of people would say that might be the pick. I was more surprised than anything else because she did so poorly. Many people did much better than her in the primaries. She did very poorly in the primaries. And that's like a poll. That's like a poll.
African American women have had a very challenged American history. But moments like these remind America why African American women took part in the Women's Suffrage March in 1913. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
Well, joining us now is foreign affairs expert Joanna LeBlanc from Washington. Joanna, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
So it appears Kamala Harris is widely accepted in the African American community, but there are still some who don't feel she's the right pick for the position of vice president. How significant is this nomination at this time in America's history?
Well, first and foremost, to have a Black woman as a vice president running mate is historic in the history of America. I think that it is a symbol for so many young Black girls and even older women in America as to what is possible. This whole process has been very inspirational, with Senator Harris, who is a senator in the Senate, the only Black woman who serves in that capacity and serves on various committees. And one powerful committee is the Finance Committee. And she's done an extremely good job in her role as a senator. So not only is she inspirational to young women, women of color and whomever, but she's also competent. So we'll see what happens from here.
Well, some would say it was inevitable that Kamala would be picked by Joe Biden, but not the president. He doesn't seem to think so. And he has said a few things about her in his response to the news. So do you think he's doing this out of fear or confidence that this election would be a cakewalk for him?
Well, first and foremost, the reason, one of the many reasons why Joe Biden chose Harris as his running mate is because Black women have been major supporters of the Democratic Party. And if you look at the 2016 election, Black women voted at 96% for Hillary Clinton. So there had been this pressure on Joe Biden to choose a Black woman as his running mate. And while some are happy with Senator Harris, there are some who are not so happy, and it could be a good thing and also a bad thing. And what they're not happy about is her history when it comes to prosecuting crimes and people of color. They think that she was in a position to do some good to repair our justice system, and she did not utilize that platform properly. So while it may be a negative for her in the Black community and among the progressives, but for Republicans and others, it will be a plus because they will see her as a nominee who does not look at race, who judge situations and interpret the law or apply the law in accordance to the facts presented.
Well, Joanna, finally, I mean, the conventions are going to be very different this year as concerns rise over the coronavirus pandemic. So could that have any impact on the outcome?
You know, I think with COVID-19, every day we're still learning. We're putting new restrictions in place, and we're keeping existing restrictions. I think that there will be some restrictions. Obviously, I don't think the convention will look like it has looked in the past. I don't think that it will be as packed out of fear of further spreading the virus. And after all, the United States is the leading country in the world with COVID-19 infection. So the Democrats probably would want less people at the convention if it continues, but the Republicans may want it to continue on, because as we know, COVID-19 has been very, very political and an issue that could have easily been addressed from merely a medical perspective, but it has been addressed and analyzed from all political angles you could think of. So the convention is going to look different this year, for sure.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. So 94 Nigerian girls stranded in Lebanon have arrived in the country. The returnees include about 30 girls seen in an online video recently calling on the federal government and other relevant bodies and individuals to evacuate them from Lebanon. The National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons had given the assurance that the federal government was making plans to have the girls, as well as others, evacuated. The chairman of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, who received the returnees at the Murtala Muhammed Airport in Lagos, said more repatriation flights are expected from Dubai over the next few days, and 200 Nigerian prisoners from Saudi Arabia.
Our girls just have to stop going on these journeys. And Lebanon has stopped issuing work visas. So by the time this repatriation is done with, we hope that we're not going to have more girls crying on the streets and saying, save us. The government of President Buhari has done enough to bring them back. So I'm hoping that working with the states and others, this will have to stop. Also, I'll talk about Dubai. By August 17, Dubai has given a deadline for all illegal immigrants in Dubai to get out of their country. As it is, the Nigerian mission in Dubai, in the UAE, has worked with the Dubai administration, and there are 3 free flights that will bring them in the next couple of days. Again, here's the message. If you're in Dubai without your papers, better come back home.
Art rather than ostentation is the rationale behind the world's most expensive coronavirus mask, say the Israeli jewelers who are crafting the $1.5 million objects for an unnamed US-based client. Made out of 18-karat gold and studded with 3,600 black and white diamonds, the mask will be fitted with a $9.99 filter to offer a high level of protection, so says Isaac Levi, owner of the Evel jewelry brand. He says the client is a Chinese art collector living in the United States. The mask, which a team of around 25 artisans is working on, might be viewed as a vulgar display of wealth during hard economic times. But for Levi, it is above all a work of art. Thanks so much for joining us on The World Today. I'm Akaite Afia. Stay safe.